Imagine a force so disciplined and feared that even the greatest empires of the ancient world hesitated to advance against it. These were the Immortals, the elite guard of ancient Persia, an army of 10,000 men that never diminished, for whenever one fell, another was ready to take his place. To their enemies, it seemed as if this force could never be weakened, as if it were truly immortal. But who were these warriors? How did they live? What made them so special? And what was their true role in the battles that shaped history? Today, we dive into the heart of the Persian Empire to discover what made the Immortals the most legendary unit of the ancient world. To understand the Immortals, we first need to grasp the context in which they were born. The Persian Empire, also known as the Achaemenid Empire, emerged in the 6th century BCE when Cyrus the Great unified various peoples under his rule. In just a few decades, the Persians became the rulers of the largest empire ever seen up to that point, stretching from Egypt to India and including Greek and Mesopotamian territories. This rapid expansion required not only strong rulers, but also a military force capable of maintaining order and protection. It was in this context that the Immortals appeared, the elite unit that accompanied kings like Cyrus, Darius, and Xerxes on their campaigns. They were not just soldiers, they were a symbol of Persian grandeur, displaying power and discipline on any battlefield. Additionally, the Immortals served as a living advertisement for the empire. They marched in gleaming uniforms, with polished weapons and flawless organization. Each appearance reinforced the image of Persian power as eternal, unbeatable, and impossible to challenge. Thus, even before entering combat, the Immortals had already won through the psychological impact they imposed on their enemies.
The Immortals were the elite unit of the Persian army, made up of 10,000 permanent soldiers. What made them unique was not just their discipline or skill, but the way they were organized. Whenever a warrior was killed, wounded, or incapacitated, another soldier immediately took his place. This kept their number fixed at 10,000, giving the enemy the impression that they were endless, as if truly immortal. This nickname was not given by chance. To foreign observers, it seemed impossible to defeat an army that never dwindled. Greek chronicles, especially those of Herodotus, described the Immortals as a force that inspired awe and even fear. But the Immortals were not just ordinary fighters. They also served as the king's personal guard. Wherever the sovereign went, they went with him, ensuring his protection and symbolizing the absolute power of the Persian throne. Being an immortal was therefore more than joining a military unit. It was becoming part of the very soul and image of the Persian Empire itself.
Being part of the Immortals was a privilege reserved for very few. The selection process was not open to just any warrior. Only men of Persian, Median, or Elamite descent, peoples considered noble within the empire, could be chosen. In addition, they had to come from families of good financial standing, as each soldier had to provide part of his own equipment. This ensured not only quality, but also loyalty. The Immortals represented the elite within the elite. Loyalty to the king was an absolute requirement. Being an immortal meant not just fighting for the empire, but dedicating one's life to the sovereign. Any sign of doubt or weakness could cost one their place. The troop was organized under a strict hierarchy. The 10,000 men were divided into subgroups, each with its own commanders, which facilitated battlefield organization. At the top was a general chosen directly by the king, responsible for leading the Immortals in major campaigns. This system made each soldier feel part of something greater. They were not isolated warriors, but pieces of a perfect military machine designed to never fail and to uphold the prestige of the Persian crown. The Immortals impressed not only with their numbers and discipline, but also with their distinctive equipment. Unlike the heavy armor of the Greeks, they wore lighter protection made of thick fabric and layers of reinforced leather. This allowed them mobility without sacrificing defense. Additionally, they carried wicker shields, smaller and easier to handle, which could form collective barriers on the battlefield. In close combat, their main weapon was the short spear, ideal for rapid attacks in formation. They also carried short swords or daggers, used when the distance between enemies closed. For ranged combat, they were masters of the bow and arrow, capable of launching projectiles with devastating accuracy. A striking detail was the uniform way they marched. Gleaming weapons, upright spears, and almost choreographed discipline gave their opponents the impression they were facing a superhuman force. The Immortals were not just well-trained warriors, they were a visual spectacle designed to intimidate. Every piece of their equipment had a dual purpose: effectiveness in combat and psychological impact on the enemy. The Immortals took part in some of the most legendary battles of the ancient world. One of the most famous was the Battle of Thermopylae in 480 BCE, where they faced the Spartans led by King Leonidas. Although they encountered fierce resistance, especially in the narrow pass, their discipline and overwhelming numbers were crucial in paving the way for Xerxes' army. The fame of the Immortals spread even further after this encounter, while still acknowledging the courage of their opponents. They were also essential in the campaigns of Cyrus the Great and Darius I, aiding in the Persian expansion across the Middle East, Central Asia, and Egypt. Their constant presence ensured that the Persian kings could conquer distant territories while maintaining order. Another major role came during the Greco-Persian Wars, where the Immortals symbolized Persia's overwhelming force against the Greek city-states. Even when defeated, as at Plataea, their elite reputation remained intact. These battles not only demonstrated their effectiveness, but also cemented the mythical image that survives to this day. The Immortals were remembered as much for their combat skill as for the psychological impact they imposed on any enemy daring to face them. The legacy of the Immortals goes far beyond their victories in battle. They became symbols of Persian power, representing discipline, strength, and absolute loyalty to the king. To the ancient world, they were almost mythical, inspiring both fear and respect in equal measure. Greek chronicles and historical accounts describe them as nearly invincible warriors, creating an image that has endured for centuries. Their influence also extended to other elite troops throughout history. Later kings and generals studied their tactics, organization, and discipline, attempting to replicate the Immortals' effectiveness in their own armies. The idea of a permanent unit, always complete and highly trained, is something we see echoed in royal bodyguards, elite units, and modern special forces. Moreover, the Immortals helped consolidate the identity of the Persian Empire. Wherever they marched, they symbolized the reach and stability of an empire stretching thousands of kilometers. They were more than soldiers. They were living ambassadors of the king's power. Even today, thousands of years later, the Immortals continue to fascinate historians, writers, and military history enthusiasts. They prove that a unit can become legendary not just for what it conquers, but for what it represents.
So what truly made the Immortals so extraordinary? It wasn't just their combat skill or impressive equipment, but the combination of discipline, loyalty, organization, and psychological impact. Every aspect of the unit, from rigorous recruitment to flawless battlefield formation, contributed to the sense of invincibility surrounding these warriors. The name Immortals was not merely a nickname. It reflected the idea that this unit represented the perpetuity of Persian power. By always maintaining the same number, even after losses, they gave enemies the impression they were facing an infinite, unchanging, and unyielding force. Moreover, they symbolized the Persian Empire itself, vast, organized, and powerful. They served as inspiration for later elite troops and continued to be studied as the ultimate example of military excellence. Ultimately, the Immortals remind us that in war, true strength lies not only in weapons or strategy, but in discipline, cohesion, and loyalty to a higher ideal. That is why, centuries later, they remain etched in history as the most legendary unit of the ancient world. If you enjoyed learning about the Immortals and want to discover more incredible stories from antiquity, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Activate the notification bell so you never miss new content, and join us as we explore the fascinating world of history.